Hi, this is John Gue from the Dover Wine Company, and you're watching DSC TV.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Wish everyone a very happy new year. Thank everybody for their work and efforts and coordination and communication since the return of school, and thank very much all faculty and building staff, be they administration or custodian food service or in any capacity, who have made this such a wonderful return back to school since the break. So thank you very much. We have some community comments section. If there was any community comments to be made, could they be made now? Wonderful, thank you very much. And this is one of the meetings throughout the year that we're very fortunate to have the Dover PTO come to us and give us an update on the exciting activities that they have and share with any thoughts they have on what has happened and what may happen. And thank you, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thanks a lot.
All right, so we had a really great first half of the year. We're kind of in the second half, which is exciting. Lots of things are happening. We tried a new event this year. It's Family Night at the Celtics. We sold about 99 tickets, which we felt was pretty successful. We did not do it as a fundraiser because there wasn't a whole lot of need for it, but we know in the future that if we want to do it as a fundraiser, we can, because it would be an easy one to do. People really seem to be excited. The game is January 30th. Something special will happen with the kids who are there. We're not exactly sure what. They're either going to get like a pen or a visit to a trophy room, depending on how many kids are there that evening. They may even be able to like high five the players as they come through the tunnel, kind of a thing. So we'll see. It was we were really excited that people were excited about it as well. Family Movie Night is the February 10th. DDOT has purchased a site license for the school, which is great, and they're allowing us to use it for movies. So we didn't have to purchase a movie license for this. However, we were kind of looking to possibly purchase this as a gift for DDOT in the future, since it was very generous of them to share it. So we're going to look into the pricing and kind of see if that's something we want to add to our budget next year. We're showing the movie Inside Out, which we're very excited about. It's very good. Books from the Heart is February 13th and 14th. We do get a surplus of funds for that every year after parents purchase the books, and we're kind of looking in ways to we can either give back to the library specifically with that event. Briefly, Dr. Renneman and Mrs. Dial, we briefly spoke about talking about sister school opportunities where we may partner with another school in the future and a school in Boston, and kind of give back in the way of like books or school supplies, and this might be an event that we can do something with that. Really not have talked about it at all, it's just an idea. Science fair, we've started getting people signed up for that. International night is coming along. Bike Safety Day, we're still looking into making it a picnic, like the back to school picnic, but we didn't get to have it this year, so we're trying to turn it into Bike Safety Day, but we're working on that. And then we'll close out the year with our open board meeting on June 9th, where we say goodbye to the old crew and hello to the new crew. That being said, we're looking into recruiting and finding new people for next year. We do have a nomination committee, but we're encouraging people on the board to try to find their own replacements, because they would be the best to sort of sell and speak about their positions. We also have added an additional conference week breakfast. We supply the teachers with luncheons once a month, and then conference week breakfast, we did it once at the October conferences. And there wasn't one in the books for the March conferences, so we decided to add one because the teachers seemed to like it. We thought it would be a nice thing to do. So that is it for events and fun things. Don't have any questions. I'll turn it over to Amy, who's our treasurer.
Just one question. Do you know the date of the bike safety?
Yes, it's May 13th.
May 13th.
Yes.
And just one comment from me. I thought the way that the word got out on the Celtics was just fantastic. Whether it was from word of mouth or through the communications, or so I know that the DS Youth Basketball also a lot of the coaches corresponded with their teams as well to push it as a community school. And so it was very,
Great.
I mean, 99 is a super number, so well done.
I actually didn't know about the coaches part, but that's great. Awesome. Thank you.
Any,
Sorry, Sarah, is the MFA trip happening this year?
Yes, Peter is going to be working on that. I can't remember his last name. Hoffman, I'm sorry. Peter Hoffman is going to be working on it. He ran it last year. And I believe he's planning it, but we are going to do it again.
Okay.
Yep.
so on the last bit.
So fundraising, which is Rachel Motley and Peggy Gemelli is the chair and co-chair, has been very successful this year. We have our numbers back from the directory advertising and sales and directory and excuse pads, and we ended up netting $6,689, which we consider to be very good and above our goals. We did a Meadow Farms catalog, which was a catalog that went out, which we consider easy money. It was parents ordered things through the catalog, and we were just sent a certain percentage of the sales. And that we came in at $3,611. Again, we beat our goal. We're in the midst of a check writing campaign. It began January 9th, and it's scheduled to go through February 10th. We're over 50% of our goal. We're actually at 53% right now, and we're at over $18,500 in donations. We expect to make our $35,000 goal. There's an e-blast going out tomorrow to remind parents. In addition, we have Rachel Motley has some other marketing tools that she's going to be using, like raffling off things like gift cards, bottles of wine, and in addition, we probably will extend it a week depending on where we are on our goal and how ambitious we decide to get. Curriculum enrichment, which is Linda Barnes and Hannah Riley Bowles, has been great this year. The spending to date is $24,840. Some of the programs we've had just by grade. The pre-K has had an author, illustrator, Sam Valentino. Kindergarten has had Wingmasters. Grade 1, Audubon Nature visits. Grade 2, Museum of Science, States of Matter. Grade 3 is having musician David Kaufman. Grade 4 is having Ted Hsu, the poetry guy. Grade 5 will go to the Minuteman Park field trip. The entire school has an Understanding Our Differences program. Each grade gets a different sort of program, and that's ongoing, and we'll have amazing hero art. So as you can see, there's just someone from every sort of the arts, science, everything. And then we also awarded our teacher grants for the year 2016-2017. This is under Tiana King and Jim McLaughlin, who are our vice presidents. We awarded this year $4,836.90. $394.90 went to librarian Mrs. Chase, and she will be purchasing a programmable robot for pre-K through second grade. $686.95 will go to grade 4. They're receiving grow light plant houses, which will allow them to learn and test some of their knowledges on plants all year round. Mrs. Berry and Mrs. Lawling will be purchasing hand drums for all the grades for $518.54. Mrs. Jewett in the Learning Center is purchasing for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade spell check devices that for a cost of $1,329.55. And grade 4 was awarded $1,909.96 for backjet chairs, which some wellness research has shown that it provides a better sensory environment for learning. So we're really excited about the applications that came in and what we were able to do, and just the things, that we do this every year, and it is always a pleasure to award that money. Questions?
Thank you
I'll
very
speak
much.
quickly.
I just have a question on the grants. In terms of requests, is there a high percentage that are fulfilled? And if there happens to be some that aren't filled, do we roll them into next year for other requests? Or how's the process around grants?
This year, we have a $5,000 maximum that we're allowed to give out for grants, and this year,
I'm sorry, in total or?
in total per
okay.
year. And this year was just under that, so we were able to fulfill everything. In years past, there have been things where maybe they needed 5 Chromebooks, and we said maybe we could do 3. But we do them every year, so teachers are welcome to resubmit every year if we're not able to fulfill them. But we are pretty successful in fulfilling most of them, which is nice.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. One thing about our fundraising, our check writing campaign, we did a crowdfunding initiative this year. So we're using YouCaring, which is like a GoFundMe or one of those crowdfunding sites, and it's been fun and successful and really easy to work with in terms of seeing donations and making it almost viral, because you can see, you know, who's donated and who hasn't. You have the option to put anonymous if you'd like, you can hide your amount if you'd like. But it seems to have been helpful and successful, and it is the only crowdfunding site that does not take a percentage for themselves. The only fees we're incurring are through PayPal, which are normal fees we did incur anyways. So it's kind of fun to see the little ticker on their website go up and to see the percentages, and it's been really helpful for the campaign so far.
It's really easy to use.
Oh, good, good.
Okay, just
Sarah and Amy, thank you for your reports. And I'm sure Mrs. Dial and Dr. Engelman say this to you all the time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But I wanted to express our thanks as well for all you do for the Chickering School. And while you were talking, I was thinking about fundraising, and I love your idea about having the current board members and chairs find their own replacements. Perhaps as a fundraiser, you could offer them up for sale. Just a thought.
Next meeting.
No, but really, thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you, very welcome. It's a lot of fun.
chair of the PTO. The chair of the PTO is a 10-year term, isn't it? Is that right?
I second.
Okay. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is our report section, and hand over to the principal.
Good evening. We are very excited to have launched our Fit and Lit program for the 11th year. We had a wonderful kickoff assembly for the entire school. It's intended to create lifelong habits of reading and exercise, and the kids are so excited about it. And Mrs. Chase back here is one of our primary drivers. And it's one of those traditions at Chickering that we are thrilled to have every year, and it gets the whole school excited. So that's one of our highlights this month. Are there any questions that you have from the report?
I just had one. When I was reading the report and the section on the professional learning community and the work that you've been doing on the technology integration, and I know that's a school goal, but I just wondered not to minimize the validity of that goal, but we talk a lot and have talked in recent months and last couple of years as to how technology is as much as part of the woven fabric of a school now as books or teachers or students, and it is in every element of every type of teaching or work that happens in a school. And I'm just wondering, do you think we're almost at the stage now that it's a little redundant and a little inappropriate to have technology integration broken out in future years' goals? Does it seem a little old and quaint, or does it still seem a valid item of work that we still need to get our arms around?
It's a very good question. I feel that it's so well embedded right now that we no longer think of it as, here's a unit, how do we add technology? Because it's already embedded. Our focus this year is helping us do just that, really focus on it, and it's also an opportunity because it's a school-wide goal for us to share broadly what we're doing. So we actually have a PD session tomorrow dedicated to that, and all teams contributed a short video clip about what they're doing. So a couple of the teams are doing projects and goals that involve QR codes and virtual field trips around the school. Other people in the school who are using technology widely didn't necessarily know about that particular app and application. So there's an opportunity for sharing when we put a lens on it across the entire school. Yesterday we had a technology committee meeting, school-based, and we were talking about what we would like to see in the future for PD across all 4 schools, so that teachers can access that next level of learning that they are ready for. So certain apps tend to be used more often in the early grades, certain ones in the upper grades. So we're looking to make sure that everybody has easy access to everything.
The way that you talked about it just then, and sharing, I can imagine that that's just the way that a team would come together and share their best experiences of teaching a science curriculum or best experience of teaching kids who are born in England or something. But and the challenge. But so it's no longer as you said, it's no longer a new item that's being woven into everything else. It's just one. Okay. Any other questions?
Just lots of great information and new initiatives. It's, I kept putting exclamation points in there, so thank you. Particularly I know we talked about Peace Builders a little bit, and the PBL initiatives, and then even ending with this group of dads who express an interest in volunteering. I mean, what a great, I haven't seen that in my duration here, so yeah. Well, I mean, in the cafeteria. I see you at lunchtime.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Tremendous. Okay, thank you very much. So the next report is Dr. Leduc. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the coordinated program review is finished. As you recall, this is where the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education comes in, looks at the procedures, protocols, and policies as associated with special education, English language learners, and civil rights. So we actually had a great visit, and we'll wait for that report, which will be here in a couple of weeks. Coupled with that is they review everything else too. So Title I, Title IIA, those grants are also, and we've already received submitted everything. Included in your packet is the accountability reports as a result of our students' participation in MCAS. You can see that all 4 of our schools, we included all 4 schools because we're all level 1 schools, which is the highest attainment. They're meeting the target for students, and even those students that might be in some of the subcategories. And there I've given you some updates for the next generation MCAS and next steps. All of our 4th and 8th grade students will take that as a computer-based assessment. We're poised and ready. We're just waiting for the state to release the practice test so we can have our students start to do some simulations with that before the actual assessment is for real. So any questions you might have, I certainly would entertain.
Just a personal comment on the grade 4 next generation MCAS preparation for it to be tight. The website that's been used, which is different to the one that the school has used before for this cohort of children, really resonated with a lot of the students. My own son, but his friends, the kids who are in the soccer carpool, it's one of the things that they talk about, and as to it has a slightly competitive dynamic to it, but it's a good thing. So just personal note, thank you. Because I think it would be as a parent, I would think of that as a daunting change to do a tight MCAS in grade 4, but
It's not for the students.
right, exactly.
I'm going to guarantee.
Deeply matter.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, Dr. Leduc? Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I hand over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Adrian, and good evening all. Welcome to the Dover School Committee meeting. Before I want to just give you a brief update on 2 pieces of enrollment. But before I do that, if you don't mind, I'd like to just recognize and acknowledge related to the coordinated program review that Karen just touched on. I'd like to recognize and acknowledge both Dr. Leduc and Christine Smith for their role in coordinating that whole process. The visiting team from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education was here a few weeks ago. They spent 2 weeks combined in our 3 districts. The reports that we'll receive will actually be individual district reports, so we'll receive 3 separate reports. But their visit was organized and scheduled, operating under the way we think as a K-12, pre-K-12 district. I think the visiting team appreciated that a lot. The work for this visit actually began a little less than a year ago with the collection of all kinds of data, and with the support of our 2 elementary principals and their assistants, the headmasters and the assistant headmasters, and many other people. The visit went off without a hitch. The scheduling was really well done, and upon leaving, we had an opportunity to meet as a group with the visiting team, and their comments relative to that were very, very positive. They were very, very impressed with our staff. The dedication and commitment that they saw through their observations and actual interviews with our staff. They conducted, over the course of those 2 weeks, a little more than 150 interviews. And that's staff, parents, and administrators. So we're looking forward to the reports. I'm sure that there'll be some suggested recommendations for us, but I view that as an opportunity for us to learn and become better at what we do in those areas. So Chris and Karen, thank you. Laura and Deb, thank you very much. Great job done by all.
Thank you.
Okay, now a more exciting topic, enrollment. So I just want to quickly update you. In your packets, you received 2 pieces of enrollment information. The first is a document around that relates to how we project, or process we use for projecting kindergarten enrollment. So on the worksheet that looks like this.
It wasn't on the online. Can we share?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Too bad.
Just wow.
You guys want to look at that? No, I have a copy.
I have another copy here.
So we'll send that on to you. I want to make just some quick points.
Yeah, we can share. Okay, thank you.
So last year, we began a process in terms of predicting kindergarten students. We look at some historical data, and the data we look at comes from the town census, which provides us with a list. And we look at this list, and it's important to get the list at about the same time every year, which is usually early December. And as of this past December, there were 43 age-eligible kindergarten students. So students who are age-eligible to enter kindergarten at the beginning of next year, actually September 1st. And the first thing I want to point out to is that you'll note on the chart, the bottom line in the 4th column, K-eligible census number, that 43 number of students on the census compared to last year, there's quite a difference. Where last year there were 62 kids on the census. The way that this process works in terms of the projections is that we compare the number of kids who are on the census, age-eligible students on the census, to the number of kindergarten students who actually enroll for that year. And so that data is laid out for you going back to the 2011-2012 school year. Then what we do is we look at those 2 data points, numbers on the census and enrolled, and compute an enrollment ratio. So you'll see that, for example, in the 2012-13 school year, there were 72 students on the census, 71 enrolled, for an enrollment rate of 99%. Contrast that to the 2015-16 school year, where there were 46 age-eligible students on the census. We actually enrolled 61 for an enrollment rate of 33%. So you have these wide-ranging enrollment ratios. So what we do is we go back 5 years, and we just take the average of the 5-year enrollment rates. So for last year, the the current year, 16, 17, we had those 62 students on the list. We actually used the 111% 5-year average. That's the higher 111. And we actually projected 69 students would enroll based on that methodology. So our projection was off by 5 students. So what that translated to was an enrollment rate of 103%. So for this year, we've gone through the same practice. We've gone back the previous 5 years, and we're projecting, based on this methodology, 48 students. And that number is the 43 age eligible times 111%, which is the 5-year average rate.
Can I just ask, the census data on which the 43 is based was taken when?
It was received in early December,
Okay.
so the first week or so in December. And that's been the same time frame that has been used over the last number of years. So as of Friday, actually as of today, we got an update today, of the 43 on the list, 30 families of 30 students have indicated that they will be enrolling. 3 have indicated they will not be enrolling. 2 are as of yet undecided, and 8 we have not heard a response yet. And the staff will be continuing to contact the 8 that we haven't heard a response yet to get a decision. Now, interestingly enough, that represents 62.5% of those 43 students. At this time last year, when we were projecting 69 students, we had, at this time last year, we knew of 39 students who indicated they were attending, a difference of 17, a difference of, well, there were 39 who had indicated they were coming, and 17 who still had not made up their mind. So the enrollment, so at this time last year, we actually ended up enrolling 23 more students. But that 39 represented just 56%. So I don't know what that means, other than the
There's
fact
still a lot
that,
to come.
well, additionally, and there's a note that says there are 11 additional students whose parents have already informed the Chickering School, 11 students who were not on the census list, but have indicated that they are coming. So right now, of the 48 we projected, there's 41 that we are aware are coming. But it's important to note that the 11 students who are not in the census, there are a handful of them that were on the census last year, but the parents decided to hold them back for another year. And then, and I'm not sure of the exact number, we can find it out, but the other students may be students who lived here a year ago but just weren't on the census. The families hadn't filled out the census information yet, or they were students who had moved in between last year and this year. But the methodology, the projection methodology, takes those students into account as part of the projection. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The thing that is an outlier here in this methodology is that we have one of the 5 years that we used to calculate the enrollment rate. Is a very, very high year. It's really an outlier compared to the other 6 years that are actually on the list. So we'll continue to monitor that, and we'll see where we're going, and we'll update you as we get into the spring and closer to both kindergarten orientation day and as we hear from more students. Bill, I know 12 months ago when we were talking about the same kind of dynamics, one of the inputs that I think was helpful to this group was any conversations that we can have with local real estate agents and brokers who could comment on the velocity of transactions and the number of transactions. I'll try and have a couple of conversations in the next couple of weeks, and if you have any existing contacts, I think that would be good to just inform people. Because last year I remember there was a January and February figure for volume of transactions that was shockingly high and helped us inform a little bit of the preparedness that we got to. So I'll try and...
I've heard anecdotally that it's similarly unseasonably active.
Okay, brilliant, thank you.
Thank
Bill,
you.
Is there any way to get it kind of mid-year, get it the capture percentage? Since we don't have updated numbers, the percentage of eligible students who are enrolled versus enrolled somewhere else.
For all of the grades?
No, for
Kindergarten?
kindergarten,
Of the current kindergarten class?
yeah, because the numbers, obviously, the census numbers are dated, or would be dated.
Actually, the census numbers are really,
We do census every year.
yeah, we do the census every year, so.
But if we're taking it mid or towards the end of the year, so it's really so the number of students who are actually enrolled versus those eligible to be enrolled. We have good numbers?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding where you're going, what you're actually asking.
What I'd like to understand is the number of students who are enrolled elsewhere, or the percentage of students who are enrolled elsewhere.
That were on the census last year.
Who are in different schools?
Who are here
Different
now.
schools.
In kindergarten?
In kindergarten, who are resident in Dover.
Yeah, so private schools are required by state law to notify the local school district where their kids come from.
Okay, so we have
Of who's enrolled, we have that data. So we can put that together.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, the census is out now, that we're just supposed to be filling out, which I need to do. When do we find out that information? Do we wait a whole year to find that out?
We don't request any updated census data. I'm not sure how helpful that would be, other than us continuing to monitor the numbers. You know, the projection methodology is similar to the methodology we use to project all the other grades. The reason that it's important to take a first look at the census data for kindergarten projections at the same time every year is so that the opportunities or the data points which relate to the number of students who may live in town but are not on the census, and how they're calculated into the formula, the methodology, you know, that has to be the same, that has to be consistent in order for the data to be, you know, reliable, frankly. It's not always, it's hard to be accurate because.
Do towns just assume that a certain percentage that are not gonna fill out the census?
Well, you know, that's something that I think the town clerk would have more information on. I know that when I was superintendent in Winchester, shortly before I arrived, the school district just had all kinds of problems estimating kindergarten enrollment. And what they used to do was take both the local and state data on a data point called live births. So hospitals in the state are required to report to the state and to the local community anytime there's a birth, and report that to the town where the mother resided. And that data was collected. So a lot of communities look at that data, which is 5 years old. And again, they do a historical look and versus the number of students who are enrolled 5 years later. In Winchester, we looked at other possibilities and decided that the census would be a much better
Yeah.
data point. It's more, it was more accurate in terms of being fresher data. But what happened in Winchester, right before we started using that, is a new town clerk came on. And my understanding was that there was always an issue with residents filling out the census and
Or not
returning
filling it out?
Well, not filling it. So in Winchester was one of the few communities in the greater Boston area that still have they don't have trash pickup. They have a town trash drop-off place. They call it the recycle center. Yeah. Well, a lot of communities out this way. But residents need a sticker in order to get in there.
Okay.
So you could only get the sticker at the town clerk's office. So anytime
If you
a
fill
resident
out
would
the
come in to
form.
get a sticker, the town clerk wouldn't give them a sticker unless they had filled out the census. So we felt the census data was as complete and reliable as the first. And that's the data we used. We actually collected the data as of every February 1st in Winchester. But,
Well, that's helpful, thank you.
Bill, do we track of those no's or, I don't know if you can do it for the no responses, but those that are holding their kids, so either, so obviously there's private school placement, but there's also those just giving them an additional year of kindergarten, of which some of these 11 were on last year's list.
Yeah.
If we knew that.
So Karen Ansavino, who does a great job working with Laura and Deb on this data, she has a list of those students.
Okay.
And so the 11 students that we talked about, again, a handful of them were students that were on the list last year, and Karen had that information. More of the students were students from families that had moved into town recently and enrolled older siblings. So we knew that they had, there were siblings that were kindergarten students. So there is an effort to collect that data on an annual basis.
Could you remind me how many classes we have in the budget reserved for next year? Is it?
We have 4.
We have 4, thank you.
Do you have any elements of your report? Any other
I
elements?
do, I'm sorry.
Go on.
It's going forever.
No, it's good.
I'll try to be brief. There are 3 points on the next report. Did you get this report in your packet?
See it, let me see it.
No, but Karen, nice to share it.
We're good.
Okay. So this is, what you have is the enrollment history and 5-year projections. You see this every October. We actually began the year, first day of school, we had 472 students enrolled, K to 5. As of October 1st, which is the official enrollment date for the purposes of the state determining its state allocation dollars and a host of other items. So we use October 1st as the official enrollment date. 1 student had moved out between that. So as of October 1st, we have 471 students. You'll see that as of January 1st, we have 477 students enrolled. So we actually have a net increase of 6 students between October 1st and January 1st. In the month of October, in the month of November, we added a student in grade 4. In December, that was a busy month for us. We added 2 kindergarten students, 2 grade 2 students, 1 grade 4 student, and 1 grade 5 student. And then for January 1, actually those students came in November. During December, we lost a student in grade 1. We gained a student in grade 3 and lost another student in grade 4. So there's a net change of 6 students between October 1st and January 1st. The good news is that compared to last year at this time, we had added 10 students in those 3 months. So So that rate of growth has slowed, but who knows? Maybe 10 more students will come in the last week of January. But, and then you'll note that the projections that internally we've been looking at, the projection rate, we've been using the one-year rate because of the accelerated growth that we've seen the last 2 years. And you'll note that there's a difference of 16 students between the 3-year rate and the 1-year projection rate. But the 1-year rate, you know, at this point looks like it'll be lower, just based on the kindergarten information we have. But based on what we've seen the last 2.5 years, we're not at all ready to make any recommendations about, you know, about what the final enrollment might look like in each of the grades at this point in time, because it has been so volatile. So the good news, though, is I think even with our 1-year projection rates, which are not conservative, there is room in all of our grade levels for that growth, and still leave available slots within our class size guidelines. So,
Great.
So I think we're in good shape going into next year. That is it.
Brilliant, excellent, okay. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is an update on English language by, I think, Dr. Reinman, if I'm following the lady who was handing out the slides. Brilliant. This is, occasionally the school committee asks for topical updates on various parts of the school's activity and curriculum, and it was with great excitement that we requested this. It's one of the, I remember the one that was done on science and the one that was done on FLES, and so it's great to step back from the fascinating business of the other topics that we discussed at the school committee meeting to actually dive down to what happens in the kids in the classroom. So thank you for taking our eyes there right now.
Thank you for asking. I want to thank Sheila Harper and Laura Dial for helping me put together this fine presentation. The materials that I handed out are copies of the slides. So anyone else would like a copy as well? So I understand I have 5 minutes.
Talk fast.
I have 21 slides.
Excellent.
Here we go. Okay. So, one of the ways I think that it helps to look at curriculum is to think about this triad of curriculum, assessment, and instruction. And if you think about those 3 pillars that make up curriculum instruction or instruction in the school, and we dive into each of these 3 pillars that are not silos. But I couldn't get the graphic. So instruction at Chickering for English language arts is based on the idea of balanced literacy. And balanced literacy is a mix of read aloud, modeling and demonstration, shared and interactive lessons, guided practice, and independent practice. So within a lesson at any time, teachers will have times when they model. If you're in your kindergarten classroom, you've seen they've written that letter and they're practicing how to read and find letters in there. All the way through to guided lessons at different times of the year at different grade levels. And then plenty of independent practice for kids to practice the skills on their own. As you know, everyone in the school has their own book bag or book bin. So what's in your book bin may not be what's in my book bin, because we're reading different genres, levels, and areas of interest. What I really wanted to have on the background of every one of these slides was a mobile that would just show all these pieces moving all at the same time. At one point something else is up, another piece moves down. There's so many parts that are happening in any lesson. So even here the instruction is a balance of fiction and narrative with nonfiction and expository text. Make a strong connection between the reading and the writing. And that's one of the pieces that we really like about empowering writers. More on that later. And lots of opportunities for speaking and listening and word study all embedded in that mobile. Curriculum for Chickering, I have to stand on this side, I'm sorry. Curriculum is chosen based on the philosophy of balanced literacy, as well as the Massachusetts framework, which you know is a combination of the Common Core and Massachusetts spices added on top. 4 strands within the standards: reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language. So to think about what it looks like in the classroom, each class has approximately 90 minutes per day dedicated to ELA instruction. That varies wildly given the day, the event, the wonderful curriculum enrichment thing that's going on, the fire drill, whatever it may be. But we aim for 90 minutes a day. Literacy permeates through all areas of the curriculum, including social studies and science, and we've been forced and invited that very much over the past couple of years because there's just not enough time to do it all. So we've really found that we've had to weave in to the other content areas to get all of that literacy work in. And the teachers in the classrooms get to pull from a multitude of resources to support their instruction so they can access their grade level peers in their classrooms. They also have technology, library, special ed, English language learner, and literacy teachers who work across the whole building who can help at any time too. So, and they do access all of those. So what does it look like if I'm a student in the classroom? A literacy block might be reading, it might be writing, it might be both. And within that time, there's typically an introduction, which is a whole class introduction, often on the rug at the front of the room, sometimes at the desks. If you're having a reading lesson, the example that we gave here was, what are the text features in a nonfiction text? Subtitles, bolds, different fonts. If it's a writing lesson, it might be using the pillar, which if you outlined when you were in school, the pillar feels really comfortable to you for taking some nonfiction writing.
Is that a new thing, the pillar?
Yes. That's part of Empowering Writers. Here we go. See, I'm building up to the excitement here. It's part of Empowering Writers is building suspense. There's stations of small group practice. So depending, again, what room you're in, what's going on, you might have stations that the kids are traveling to. You might have small group practice where I'm pulling this set of folks and saying, okay, we're going to come work on our fluency on this piece. You guys are working over there. You're working here. You are independent reading. And then it's 10 or 15 minutes. Bell rings, everybody move. Okay. And then there's usually wrap up at the end, or there is a wrap up, and it's usually whole class. Okay. So reading first. So as we're in these pillars, curriculum. So we use a reader's workshop format. That was introduced, if you're looking at the history over time, when we got rid of our Basil, our open court reader, brought in our Tufts consultants, and brought in the Lucy Calkins Reader's Workshop model. Okay. This has that same format of modeling, guided practice, independent practice. Right. To support reading instruction in the school, every classroom has a classroom library. We have the faculty library, thank you DSEF, with over 1,700 titles that teachers can go and pull for small group instructions. They're mostly in bundles of 6, so you can pull small groups. Everyone has the same book to read. Our school library, thank you Mrs. Chase, has over 19,000 titles in print, audio, or ebooks, as well as our professional library, which is also housed in the faculty library downstairs. We have several online programs that we regularly use throughout the building. ReadWorks is actually proven to be the most valuable one that we brought in recently. It has a lot of opportunities to take a topic and have fiction and nonfiction text, so you can have a lesson where you compare information from 2 texts and then discern questions, which is very much of the PARC format, or the new MCAS format. We use RazKids, some of you may be familiar with that one. Reading A to Z, IXL. Hopefully these are all letters that you've heard at homework time at some point, with smiles on their faces.
We have weekly periodicals we have in the building. Different grade levels use different options. We have Time for Kids, Weekly Reader, and Scholastic News. And our core and supplemental curriculums, which you may be familiar with, Foundations and Text. So lots of ways, back to your mobile, to teach lots of things. Okay. In 2012, we moved from the Writers' Workshop model to Empowering Writers. We had lived with that Writers' Workshop model, again, back to those Tufts consultants, they did Readers' Workshop, we did Writers' Workshop, and as a faculty, we found that we needed a more structured system. It didn't have that longitudinal growth of, this is expected in kindergarten, in first grade, that clear, defined pieces, and it was hard to identify when students were making growth. So we also always, as you know, do our MCAS analysis, and found that we were still showing a lack of growth in that open response and long comp performances. So we had a faculty committee that we put together, reviewed a number of different types of curriculum, looked at the standards, and landed with Empowering Writers. The main reason that we really like Empowering Writers, not only is that structure that tells us at each grade level what's going on, but it ties in the importance of reading and writing together. So when we are reading, we are pausing and taking a look and using our expository pillar to critique how that piece of that we're reading would fit into the expository pillar. So then later when we go to do our writing, you can see the expository pillar to the writing piece. It has two graphic organizers. It has a narrative diamond and the expository pillar. Any questions so far? I'm way over my 5 minutes. Okay. Teaching writing is probably one of the hardest things to teach. And there's very few classes on how to teach writing. There's how to become a writer. But how to teach writing is really hard. So for us, and using Empowering Writers, is that annotation and analysis of passages, which I just talked about, to the pillar. Right? Comparative analysis of several texts to synthesize ideas before writing. We'll go back to that MCAS question, right? Here was the nonfiction piece about penguins. Here was the poem about my father's feet, the little penguin on the feet. And then there were the questions. And you had to use information from those two pieces to write about penguins. The two graphic organizers. Writing is narrative writing, which is that personal narratives, fiction and fantasy writing. Expository writing is nonfiction writing, and opinion. As they move through middle school, they learn how to build an argument. I know they're practicing now. I don't want to go to bed. Yes, you do. And then leading to the ability for criticism when you're in high school. Here's an example of an annotated page, right from Empowering Writers, where they have a text that they're working from, and they're breaking out the pieces they're finding in the introduction. They're breaking down that introductory paragraph, the 3 main points. This isn't the entire piece. The first paragraph is the first item from the opening sentence. It goes in third, second paragraph. It's lovely. It's very structured. Okay. And, because you asked, technology. As you know, many assessments are moving online. Next generation MCAS. We have text-to-speech software that's even Google Read and Write, Google Speak. Word prediction software, spell check, everybody's favorite, and Google Classroom. So there's lots of opportunities for technology in our writing, as well as we still learn manuscript writing. We start with our Sky writing. And cursive writing in 3rd grade.
We still do cursive?
Yes, we do.
Why?
Great question. Why? So that when I'm 16, I can sign my learner's permit. So that I can read.
X doesn't work.
No, X doesn't work. 2 X's. So that I can read when I get to high school, or even in middle school when I use original texts.
Primary
Thank you, primary sources. Right, some of them are in cursive, journal entries that are in cursive. You can read the letter from your grandmother and maybe even write a check. I can hope.
It still happens.
Yeah, to your point about it's difficult to teach writing.
Yes.
when you add, it's difficult to teach writing on an electronic device. I'm imagining one of the challenges is that the child and the student focuses on, I need to type properly, rather than thinking about how the text is being structured. That they're focused on the actual, this is a typing exercise, a keyboarding exercise, rather than a writing exercise. Is that part of the framing that you've had to?
It's very similar to, I need to get my ideas down even when I handwrite, and then that's why we revise and edit.
Got it.
So the same thing, they learn to type, they actually edit better probably on screen. I know they edit better than I do on screen.
Okay, that's a great
So
answer.
it's very similar piece. Yeah. You referenced the keyboarding program, so fourth grade has been experimenting with a different keyboarding program than what we've been using prior to now. And it would figure that y'all like it so much because it's like 3 times more expensive than the other one we were using. We're working on that. I'll be in touch with you, Dawn, about the budget.
Sorry about that.
All right. So speaking and listening is going way back to the beginning, one of those 4 strands within the standards. It's embedded in everything that we do. Right? So there's opportunities, there's class presentations, there's a Flesh Spanish presentations. I don't know if you had a chance to come in to see 2nd or 3rd grade in the past couple of weeks. Kids did their whole presentation in Spanish. Me boxes, remember 2nd grade me boxes? This is who I am. That's a form of speaking and listening. Star of the week, kindergarten and other places, classes use it. Book groups and literature circles, talking about my reading, listening to someone in my group and then knowing how to answer and respond in a way that uses what they said. Virtual field trips, Laura referenced those a few minutes ago. 5th grade is getting ready to go on the Concord Museum trip and build a virtual field trip out of it. Think, Pair, Shares, you're working in a whole group, sharing. The Wax Museum in 5th grade. Reader's Theater. And more slides, but I'll stop there. All right. Language, that 4th one, is what we affectionately refer to as word study. And that's everything from letter identification, letter sound symbol connection. We use Foundations K to 3. We use Text Talk, 1st through 3rd grade. Grammar usage and mechanics, affectionately referred to as GUM. It's time to do GUM. Doesn't know. Sadly, vocabulary, 4th and 5th grade. That's the one that's used at the middle school as well, although I think they're phasing that out. And then we have a quick word handbook for everyday writers, which is a personal dictionary. It comes with the sight words listed in, the kids use that to build their own personal dictionary. Okay. So back to those 3 pillars. Now we're jumping over to the assessment pillar. All right. How do we know if they've learned it? And it would be swell if I could pull up a dashboard and say, here's Lauren in kindergarten, and here's how I've seen her grow over the years, and here she is as she exits as a 5th grader in every one of those 4 strands. I don't have that. We tried that with Galileo, if you recall. Didn't do that in the way that we wanted. We do have lots of ways of knowing where kids are. I don't have a one single dashboard that would do that. I don't know that I do, or that I would want one, but we don't have that. So in order to tell you how we know what they know, there's lots of pieces, once again, to the puzzle. Okay. We have formal and informal assessments. So formal assessments, DRA2, AIMSweb, MCAS, now the next generation MCAS, and we have biannual literacy benchmark data meetings. And these are new in the past couple of years. So we've always asked teachers to gather data at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year to look at how their students are growing, DRA, MCAS, math assessments. We take that data, and then Sheila Harper and her literacy team culls that data from the whole school and puts together prioritized lists of students who need or may need intervention. And there are these very elaborate grids that we tried to figure out how to put in here, but by the time we scrubbed out the kids' names and made it look like you didn't know who they were, it didn't look like anything. They're wonderful. They're very detailed. We sit down with grade level teams. Our next round is first week in February.
Next week.
Next week. Okay, I'll be there. And And we sit down with this data, they have it printed out, and we sit with that whole first grade team, and we look at who we're worried about, who's made progress, who's getting tier 2 support, who's getting special ed, who's getting tier 3 support, and how can we work to shuffle our resources to best meet the needs of all the kiddos. So we do that in early October, and we do it this time of the year as well. It's a great time for that whole first grade team to sit together and say, what's going on with your kiddos, who do you have? Oh, let's make a group out of these two, let's regroup this group. So it's a pretty amazing thing.
That's twice a year.
Yes, yeah, we do it first off and then right about now. Doesn't make sense to do it in June because of the next one. Informal assessments, those writing samples, we use rubrics from the Empowering Writers Unit, curriculum. Writing records, when kiddos are reading, we're listening to them reading, and we're keeping track of how well they read, what words they omit, what words they add. Reading groups, one-to-one reading. This is a different type of grid. So this is from a classroom. It's from a second grade classroom. Student names are scrubbed out, as you can see, teacher name is scrubbed out. But on the left side is September, and on the right side is now. So this is part of that data that Sheila and her team use to build their grids. You can see that so student 1 was tested at a 20 using a fiction text. Their engagement score was a 6, which puts them, that's not highlighted. The expectation is between 6 and 7 in that category. ORF, oral reading fluency. So when you read aloud, which words did you say correctly? Was 13 for this critter. Their comprehension score was 15. The expectation is between 19 and 25. So this critter is instructional at a text of 20 level for a fiction.
Am I right in saying those expectation ranges, the 11 to 14 ORF, that's expectation at the end of the academic year? Or
that is within that category. So in order to move from one text level to another, you can first be instructional and then you are independent.
Yep.
So you must score in that range in all 3 categories to be independent. And then you could move up to the next level.
Understood.
That's a great question, thank you. So at the end of September, we had this side of the grid. And then anyone who wasn't at benchmark, over here, gets tested again. Right.
Yep.
And you can see we've made some progress. We still have some work to do, but it's a good thing we still have 5 months left in school. All right. Oh, sorry, Sheila, go ahead.
Can I say something? We
Please.
do actually collect this data again in June.
Oh, sorry.
We just don't have a benchmark meeting. So I have the June data to start the next year with. And we can see growth for students that we're tracking and are curious about. But so there's another piece to this that was cut off. There's space to register, and the whole school does this June data for AIMSweb and DRA.
Does that get utilized at the middle school for 5th graders?
Yes. Yes.
Or at least get sent on?
Yeah, get sent on. Yeah, absolutely. Karen's going to talk more about that in a second.
And this is identifying children who, if they're not meeting within the expectations at that grade level, then they're being considered for the extra support work that you put into the instructional day. And a parent would know that. I mean, that this is, if there's red marks on there, the parents are engaged in the conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you are chosen to go into Tier 2 literacy, there's a conversation with your classroom teacher and a letter from Mrs. Harper. And
Gotcha. Okay.
it's also part of the material that we use to think about Title I tutoring, which doesn't happen on this cycle at all.
And how about on the flip side, if there was something, if you were expecting 19 to 25 and someone was coming up with a 35, those conversations are also with a parent are happening.
Right, so the max of that is a 25, but yes, so like a moment ago when I said when we're sitting together as a first grade team and we're looking at a list and I've got someone who's flying high right now and Mrs. Harper's got someone in her class that is too, well, let's do a book group with them so we can go across classes as well. So when we're regrouping and moving kiddos around, we've got lots of opportunities to get those 2 critters together, maybe someone from another room, and have their own book group. That's another big piece of the intervention block time. So if it's not during reading group time, it might be during intervention block that those 3 kids are with me that day for their reading group. And then they're independent for 2 or 3 days and then they circle back. That's a great question, thank you. Okay. So we talked about 5th grade data. So all of this DRA data lives in a shared drive that we can access throughout the school. Anyone can get, any faculty member can access this data and use it for any number of Title I analysis, Tier 2, Tier 1 literacy groups. To cull it and say, how are we doing over time, would be a magical meta-analysis thing. And maybe if I had nothing to do in July, I could do the whole school. But I did go through and look at grade 5, right? Because that's part of what I think the question is how are we getting them ready for middle school? So if I look at, and this is not one of my fanciest ones, but there we are, by year, the total number of 5th graders last year was 93. 5 of them did not make the end of the year benchmark, which is a 50 independent in a DRA. 88 of them did, so 94.6% of our 5th graders met the end of the year benchmark at the end of 5th grade. And we are remarkably consistent over the last 3 years in meeting that number.
May I ask, for the information that was in that previous grade, could that, if a parent were to ask in June for any recommendations for summer reading lists? I know grades are provided with summer reading lists, and the resources are fantastic on the school's websites for suggestions for a grade. But I'm just wondering, is there any? Does the information there help tailor a response to the child for a summer reading list?
And that's good, and if you know your end of the year DRA level, a quick, easy hop is to go over to the Scholastic website and put in your reading level, and it will pop up a whole list of books. And then you can sit next to your reluctant reader for the summer and say, what do you want to read? Want to read this one? Want to read this one? Or you can just buy them all and here you go.
So I would think that very few parents would think to ask that question, but perhaps if they were prompted, you may have quite a few coming.
Could you put it in a report card?
Not set up that way right now,
No,
but it could be an end of the year communication. Think about that. It's
End
not
of the year communication would be good.
Yeah, it's not private, it's not secret, it's not something we put up on the bulletin board.
Yeah.
So there is a rate, a level that every child achieves at
There are benchmarks at each grade
At
level
each
for where we
grade
expect them
level.
to be coming in, middle, and end of the year.
And is that one of these ranges that's on that
Text
page, or is
level.
that what the text level is?
The text level. So at the end of 2nd grade, I would expect a student to be 28.
28.
Thank you, 28.
Okay.
I have yet to memorize.
But you don't report that to the parents never see that. I'm asking the question because I just recently went through and started purging from old files, and in the way old days, we used to get, I don't know what they were, but there was a reading level that would go out to the parents in the fall, and then there would be something that would go out in the spring, and you could see the change in your child's reading in the 2nd grade at a spring level, or your child's
So it was your
reading at a
DRA
4th.
score.
Was that a DRA?
That was
Well,
a
we
DRA
would get those, and you kind of knew where your child stood in the range of expectations for their grade level. And that's kind of comforting to have in addition to the report card. So, but it's interesting to know that the data is, you have the data. And I get that you need to let us kind of let you do your job and stay back, and you're giving us probably what we need. But it just reminded me of of the data points that we could also see as a parent way back when.
Thank you. All right, so we did this. So what are some of the other things that I can look at? Another way of looking at data, this is an Ames Web actual student sample, hence the really fancy redacted information at the top, of another 2nd grader. And what this does, let's see if I can do this. This is their oral reading fluency. So it's how well they read out loud. It's not a comprehension score. So Ames Web is a screen. It is one tool of many. Isn't the pinnacle, it's one of many. So in 1st grade winter, oral reading fluency, this critter was where that little dot is. Okay, here's 1st grade spring, 2nd grade fall, 2nd grade winter. So those are 3 things you're looking at. The target is the line at the bottom. all of the second graders, or first graders at that point, scored on that line from the top down to the bottom. The average was the box in the middle, box and whisker charts. And you can see that this grader was right in the middle of the pack, the winter first grade, right in the middle of the pack of spring first grade. Right up at the top there, second grade fall, second grade winter. Now the interesting thing about this is one of the things that it is looking at, or maybe inadvertently measures, is how quickly you can speak. The fox and the cat went up the hill. Well, this guy didn't change a whole lot from second grade fall to second grade winter. So that's the opportunity to go back to the teacher and say, or for the teacher to look and say, oh, wow, he's reading with inflection now. He's reading for meaning. He's pausing to actually pause and breathe. So the fact that his score dropped from sort of the top range to the middle may not be a crisis. It might actually be really good news. You get lots and lots of data here. I think in some ways, I'm going to risk this, we're data heavy. It's how do you use the data? The teachers, I need to remember to say this, the teachers take a ton of time in class and outside of class to do these assessments, grade them, score them, get them into data sheets for us. It is a huge amount of time on their part. So we need to make sure that the data we gather is useful and is used well.
It's not pen and paper these days?
Most of it is online. So this one, the kiddos will read, and I've got my iPad, and as they're reading, I'm scoring on the iPad, and it counts for me.
That's what I thought.
Where would you say you are from 1 to 10 of the data being, what's being collected is relevant and useful?
Go ahead.
It's very relevant. I wanted to comment, this units on the side are words per minute. So this student from fall to winter is around the 126 range of words correct per minute. That's very healthy, so that flat line isn't concerning to me. So we have many students functioning sky high in this assessment, which screens so we can see clearly those who are not reading, who are reading below that solid line, which represents the target. It's like immediate, put an intervention plan into place immediately. So it's just that one measure, words correct per minute. We have some kids who get ready and they go, and they and they read these things super fast beyond belief. So it tends to pull the average, the bell curve thing way up here. So if anyone's falling down below, that's that's a huge red flag. And so we'll compare that data with their DRA data and look at it that way.
So to answer your, I'm going to echo Shelley, very relevant, because it gets used for everything. It's used in these data meetings, it gets used in groupings, it's used to help figure out what we're going to do in intervention block.
I'm sorry, because you said a ton of time is spent collecting data, so
Well,
the whole,
to do it either.
so with the whole kind of universe of data, do you feel that everything that's being collected is used and relevant, or is there some work still to be done to stop doing certain things and that isn't particularly valuable or useful?
There's always work to be done. Any chance we can look to find a more efficient assessment, one that gives us better data, would be great. So we're always out looking. Christine, would you add anything to that?
No, I mean, I think when you look at Ames Web, so from a teacher's perspective, this is a quick shot, right? So when I give this in the fall, it tells me more than what I think you see on paper, right? It tells me the student who's already going to have trouble with speaking, or not listening, but the speaking part. Because I have students who, you can't hear them. They're so quiet, or the anxiety piece. I have kids where, agreed, we're very high on the fluency piece, and again, this is just fluency, that's not comprehension, which is why the DRA is so important. DRAs take a lot of time. They take a lot of time to give, it takes a lot of time for the student to do it, because it's multiple pages of writing, and then it takes time for scoring it. But it gives you a ton of information too. So you're able to do those intervention blocks right off the bat. You're able to pull kids for book groups that can challenge them, that can help support them. The Ames Web, again, back to this, this one's so quick to give, because I'm sitting at my computer, they're reading, it still gives you that information of, should I be concerned? And sometimes, especially this year, you might have a student you're concerned in the fall, and then you go to do it in the winter and you think, I'm not concerned. And lots of things change. Their level of comfort changes, right? We don't like to read out loud to our teacher. she judges us, she grades us, like we want her to love us. And so by the fall, they're not worried about that anymore. So a lot of that drops off. We first started using this, I had kids who dropped, and I was worried. It was because they were actually reading with inflection and expression and understanding, rather than taking the big gulp and just, but that also gives you information. Who are those kids you need to work on for expression? So, yeah, though it takes us a long time, I think we've done a good job over the past 5-10 years of weeding some of that out. You mentioned Galileo. That didn't serve a purpose the way we hoped it would.
Right.
This does.
How long have you been doing AIMSweb and the DRA assessments?
AIMSweb's only been, what, 3 years? 4 years? It's short.
No, well, no, before AIMSweb was Dibbles.
We in 4th grade, though, didn't do that.
So
Right,
some
so it's-
variation of this
yes.
has been in place for 7 years.
Yes, DRA's been much, much longer.
For, well,
I
you've
mean,
been reading, so however long ago you were reading, you were doing DRA.
yeah,
It was DRA 1, and now it became DRA 2.
yeah. We've been doing DRA for a long time.
Alright, so one of the spiffy things about AIMSweb is you can kick out all sorts of graphs. And so getting ready for this, it was sort of one of those, well, what other graphs can I kick out and create? So this one's kind of an interesting one, and it sort of looks at over time. It's back to that similar 5th grade DRA graph a minute ago. So this one looks at, so this is grade 5. This was 2012 to 13, which we weren't doing this in 5th grade then. But here's the winter score, the average fall score for the whole 5th grade. Here's the average winter score, here's the average spring score. The following year, the next cohort, right here, the next cohort, and the current cohort. Not everyone is done testing yet, and so that green right there might be a little high as soon as everyone's done. So it's kind of interesting. It shows that, you know, we're up there. We're doing really well, we're up there, but we're also continuing to grow, which is hard to do. Interesting one over 2nd grade. Track cohorts through. You could take a point at this and say, well, the 2nd graders came in stronger or faster word callers than their peers of previous years. So this is the data really tell us. Okay. All right, so assessment over time. So back to that wonderful dashboard if I had one, which I don't. And here's part of the reasons why and why not we have that. MCAS. The test has changed, the test will continue to change. Who knows what's coming this spring? It's limited in its scope. It's how are we doing on those 3 days in that high-pressure test environment, even though we try to keep it normal here. The DRA is consistent and well implemented across the school. Christine talked to that a minute ago. I think we've done a nice job on normalizing that within the school day. It consistently shows us that most students are reading at or above grade level. Those who are not identified through literacy data meetings. AIMSweb screening tool. One of those spiffy things in the reports is we can set it to Dover norms, Massachusetts norms, or national norms. Dover norms, state norms. And again, it's how quickly they read, not comprehension. In summary, we've done good work. We have work to do. There's always continuous improvement. Your Chickering teachers are highly skilled at accessing the multitude of resources around them, which we are grateful for the funding that you provide to us because we are able to provide a rich environment for them to work in.
Tremendous, thank you.
Tremendous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I feel like the parents need to hear this information.
Well, it's on TV.
Watch it.
It's on YouTube.
Oh, no.
It is. So
Very enlightening.
that was really excellent, and I'm so glad we took the time to go through that. Does anyone have any final questions on that?
I guess I have a couple of questions. I heard you talk about on the writing component of the ELA curriculum, the desire to have a more structured program. And I think the opposite of that is on the reading side. It is a less structured program. Everybody's comfortable with those dynamics, in that, I mean, how do you ensure that there is parity across the grade in what is being delivered in terms of a reading curriculum, just for that one component of the ELA curriculum, given that it is a more unstructured program and that you're utilizing different addendum resources to supplement and enrich the children?
We can do that one. The Empowering Writers curriculum, even though has writers in the title, is working constantly with the reading and the writing and the reading and the writing. They're almost inseparable in terms of instruction. A lot of the planning and the uniformity across the grade comes through the work that teams do. Every single week, teams are getting together and talking about the curriculum, talking about their assessment, and it's that familiarity and those frequent conversations that really help us out, as well as the incredible guidance of Sheila Harper in terms of making sure that people have what they need, interpreting parts of the curriculum, working through some of those questions that we have. And I think the fluidity that we have through our reading instruction is really important because it gives us the flexibility to create the experiences that we want to create for our children. It was interesting, I went to an Empowering Writers conference in the fall, and the presenter was one of the co-founders. And she said, you know, when I first started teaching, I knew I would do a great job because I loved to write and I was a fabulous writer. And I learned my first year that I could not teach writing. And I think, you know, that spoke to the need for structure in terms of instruction. And at this point in our 4th year of using the curriculum, we have the benefit of children who have heard that language. And it's there. It's part of what kids talk about. It's now becoming part of what parents talk about. We talk about the expository pillar and the narrative diamond. I don't know how many people outside of Dover would know about it, but it really helps us build very well from one unit to the next, from one grade to the next. And it's very nice at this point of implementation to see that being so fruitful.
Can I do 2 follow-on questions to George? There was a myriad of resources that were described there. Is it hard to keep track of which ones are still useful? I'm just wondering if, let's say a couple of those, the reading aids were, let's say Raz Kids was something that we all remember as being something that was very useful, but is there any way to track if it still is? So that, because I'm not advocating we take away tools from the faculty. I just wondered how do you track that?
So any of the online databases have online tracking tools, so we can get an idea of how much they're being used. We spend a lot of time talking to teachers and parents. What's working, what isn't working. This 4th grade typing thing, boy, are we hearing about how much everyone loves that one. So yeah, we do get a lot of feedback. So we can do our data, we can do our quantitative analysis, but we also have our qualitative in terms of what's effective. So we don't use the everyday math online component now because it wasn't getting used. So we found other resources that made up the cost differential.
So then the question was, perhaps to Karen, it was asked before, how does the link then to middle school, can you talk about that bridge?
Thank you for having my
Yes. Laura Mullen is the curriculum leader at the middle school. And she works closely with Dr. Reineman and Ms. Daly from Pine Hill to transition that data that you just heard about, the Ames Web. The middle school uses the Scholastic Reading Inventory, which is a similar indicator for fluency. And they also do the Fountas and Pinnell assessment, which is a similar assessment to the DRA2. So every 6th grade educator looks at that data and has a clear understanding from both Pine Hill and Chickering where this current student that they have in front of them is functioning at this time, and then can take that and then go to the next, do their own assessments in the fall, and then do that seamless next step. They also use Readers and Writers Workshop at the middle school level. And to answer your question about how you assure consistency in the Readers Workshop, it's really looking at the resources and matching them to the instructional level of those kids. That's why there's a myriad of resources. And you launch with a whole class, then you break into those small groups so each child is getting what they need in those small groups, and then come back and summarize doing targeted lessons. The middle school is moving towards that model too. So we've made some great inroads. This is only the second year the middle school has done the Fountas and Pinnell and the SRI, so they're actually starting to look at that data and thinking about next steps for what happens there.
Any other questions? That was really excellent.
Really helpful.
Really excellent. I know we took a lot of time on it, but it really was very worthwhile. No, it was really appreciative.
I was reflecting back on the day when we, in elementary, well, I speak for myself, everybody read the same book. And how amazing it is, how tailored and how, I mean, my son is reading books that just fit his interest and his reading level, and it would never would have been conceivable in a public school back then. So it's really, and he loves to, well, he likes to read a lot because of it, which is phenomenal. So thank you.
It's very cool. In our house, we actually found some of Daddy's writing aged 10, and let's just say things have improved. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Moving on. Superintendent's going to talk about the FY18 operating budget.
First, we're going to do
the monthly financial report. I apologize.
Monthly financial report. Don's going to walk you through information that I hope was included in your packet. Don, and then I'll make just a few comments regarding an update on special education out of district portion of the FY17 budget.
So I had a couple of things for you this month. You have your monthly December 31st, as of December 31st, status of appropriations. It's also end of the quarter, so you have the revolving and special funds roll forward through December 31st. And we had mentioned previous that the town of Dover had arranged for the Chickering Student Activities Fund to be audited. It was a long process, but we finally have the report that's also included for your review. And as Mr. McCall mentioned about the CPR, the audit is a good opportunity to learn and to go back and revisit a few things. I don't think, I can't remember a time in my tenure here where I've seen an outside audit by the for the student activities, but know that the town does do internal audits.
Oh, right.
So they had done a couple internal audits, but I don't think they're as versed in the compliance requirements as an outside auditor. So some of these things that were brought to their attention they hadn't really thought of before. So just back to the status of appropriations, there really isn't a lot of new to report. We are in really good shape considering that we added those 2 teachers. And right now, if everything stopped today, we'd be looking at just a negative variance before circuit breaker of $45,000. So, but think about it, we have $1 million of circuit breaker. So unlike past years where we had a couple of unbudgeted out of districts, we're not seeing that this year, so that's really helping the overall budget. So any questions on the status of appropriations? On the special revenue and revolving funds, you have the building rental, and as of the last time both Sherburne and Dover met, I went back and realized we were not charging the custodial overtime when they're here doing outside group functions to the building fund. So you will now start seeing expenses, because when they dock their time that they're doing youth basketball or soccer program, that now is being billed to where the groups are paying for the overtime.
Do we cover our costs when we do?
It depends, yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna look at that though, it depends on which custodian covers it, but it's pretty healthy
Close.
amount, yeah. Cafeteria, we've gone through years where the operations didn't look so good, but now with the increase in the price that the school committee approved last year and a little bit tick up in the participation. We are showing a profit, and now if we stopped everything today, we'd be looking at a fund balance of 19,000 versus the zero or negative that we had 2 years ago.
This doesn't include the unused, the
No,
cash receivable, does it?
it's net of the, net of deposits in advance of 17,000.
Oh,
Right, so
sorry,
that
it's
is.
right there in
Yep,
front of me.
yep. And then you
How
have
do
a.
we do that at the end of the year? Now you're doing them every quarter?
We
That
do, yeah,
adjustment?
yep.
Okay.
Because we can run reports and we know what it is, so anytime we present numbers, we'll show it net of the deposits in advance. You have the roll forward of the gift fund, and most of the activity in the gift fund was really the second phase of the preschool playground. So the things that didn't get covered by the preschool, $30,000 that you guys appropriated is now running through the gift. We had to do some transfers. But you still have a $20,000, almost $21,000 balance in the gift. And then you have the detail to that showing that of that, about $2,400 is restricted for special ed. And then you have the.
We never use it for special ed, do we?
The small piece, yeah, we have, yep. And then you also have the preschool, so right now, the revenue is reflecting the first semester, the second semester bills just recently been out, so we're not seeing that revenue yet. But now we're seeing expenditures, and what you're seeing under expenditures is payroll for the 1.6 FTEs of educational assistants that are being charged to the revolving fund. And then at the bottom, you have the student activity fund, which is actually one of the audit findings, is that we should be including that in your reports, so you can see the activity. Any questions on those funds?
Isn't that a revolving fund?
It is,
They
but it's
said
a
it wasn't.
it's sort of a fiduciary fund in that we're collecting, it's not our money, we're just
Yeah.
collecting for, field trips and things
Yeah.
like that, so sort of we're the trust of it.
We're holding it for the
We're holding it
benefit
for the
of
benefit, yeah.
a particular person.
And then on the audit report, you have the final audit report. I think the way that it's in the packet is you have the management's responses is first, and then the audit report. Because we were asked to respond to the findings. And there was really nothing, I'll meet with Laura and Kelly and Karen to administer this fund, we'll tweak a few things. There is some policy work that both Dover and Sherborne's gonna need to do, because if you go look in the district's policies, we address the middle school and the high school student activities, but for some reason, we never mention the two elementaries, and it does need to be specifically mentioned. That was a lot of the write-up that they had. Most of it was just little tweaks here and there.
Nothing jumped out as concerning.
No,
Okay.
no. In fact, it was a good way to clean up, like they had not bonded Laura and Karen or Kelly.
Yeah.
So that was a quick fix on
Yeah.
on the town's insurance policy. So it's always good to have someone come in and look. And I think we were at the same time starting to bring more information about the student activities account to the school committee, because you are sort of responsible to sort of oversee what happens. So if you have any questions after you read through it, just feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Also included in your packet was, received an updated spreadsheet, hopefully.
Yep.
I was just wondering if the.
You're very confident
Yeah.
today.
Oh, we weren't batting
Just a
very
slip
well
up.
that first agenda item.
You're back on track, you're okay.
All right. So I just want to point out four things. First is that compared to November, when you saw the first report, where we were, where the budget, the actual budget versus what we have projected at this time last year. Remember, we put the out-of-district budget together by March, and as we know, generally, things change, the last 3 or 4 months of school, and certainly over the summer. And so in November, we were at a positive variance between what was budgeted and the actual of $51,480. There have been some adjustments since then. Line 12 on your report, there's an expenditure for what we are believing at this point is a temporary placement. And remember, this would be a middle school student. And we all understand that the Dover budget takes care of all pre-K to 12 out-of-district expenses.
Yep.
So the reports that you have identify our Dover children who are placed out of district in that grade range, pre-K to 12 plus, up to the age of 22 in some cases. And you see the amount. There's also in addition, line 23, and that is a settlement. That's been a case that we've been working on for a long time.
Can I ask what tempering means in this context?
Wouldn't budget thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is that a standard terminology?
So the net change, we still have a positive variance between actual and what was budgeted of a little more than $25,000. You see that on the second page at the bottom. And the last piece I wanted to just point out is that according to this list, there are 9 pre-K to 5 students who are out of district and 32 on the list for the middle, high school, and up to age 22. But if you look at lines 29 and 32, those are 2 placements that the students aged out. So they actually reached the age of 22 during the summer. So we had partial costs, but as of now, we keep them on the list because there's a budget impact for this year, but they have aged out, and they are not included on the projected budget for next year.
So that just, the number there is just like a prorated amount or whatever?
Yes,
for the time that
exactly.
they were for this fiscal year?
Correct.
And Bill, the remaining from 29 to 32, are there others that are going to be over the next year aging out?
We can, under the FY18, you have an updated FY18 projected spreadsheet in your packet. There were no students from this year to next year that are aging out, but there are students who will be graduating. So they are not included in the FY18 projected budget. So we do take that into account when we build our projected budget for the following year.
This is very helpful, thank you very much.
Very good.
Okay, so moving on to item 7, the proposed FY18 operating budget.
So we have 2 pieces, 2 components, actually 3 components to this agenda item. The first is that Christine will do a brief presentation for you that identifies 3 special education programming initiatives, actually 2 programming initiatives and 1 initiative related to an adjustment of how of delivery service model for our BCBA services that we provide. And Chris is going to get into that in a second. Now, the changes, the 2 program changes, actually are changes that are being proposed for Dover-Sherburne Regional High School. But we believe that there will be positive budget impact on the Dover budget. And we'll get into this in more detail because we are anticipating and are very hopeful that there will be some of the students that are on the out-of-district list that, because of the establishment of these programs, will actually return to our district. So that's really positive. But before we get into that, I just want to make a comment regarding the special education reorganization that first was established 3 years ago. Since that time, there have been some adjustments to that original reorganization. And over the past year, we've actually had conversations at this table, as well as at the Sherburne School Committee and the Regional School Committee, about possible further adjustments to the organizational structure. You know, how much time, what FTE should the team leader's position be, and as well as some other pieces. We've really looked at that carefully as we've gone through this year, and what I would like to indicate to you is that we will not be proposing any changes to the current organizational structure for next year. It doesn't mean that there will not be proposed changes that may come up next year or the year after. The reason for that is things seem to be, things have settled in, they've settled down. We have, things seem to be going pretty well. Christine, who has come in, has done a really nice job in getting to know our program, our staff, beginning to understand that structure, that organizational structure. And in the end, we felt that given that things are working pretty well, it made sense for Christine to have additional time, to have a full year under her belt, plus some, along with a new superintendent coming on board, to take, that it would be appropriate to use more time, and if there are changes that may be appropriate for those to come up after there's been a full year and the new superintendent has had some time to take a look at that organizational structure as well. The one piece, the one caveat is our 4 chairs are now at all 4 schools are at a 0.8 FTE. As you know, we've had an interim team chair at Chickering for the last 2 years. I believe, and I think we all believe, that part of the challenge in finding that right person for the position is related to the fact that it's not a full-time position. And so we think that that has hindered our recruiting and hiring process. So we're going to be talking about that over the next month or so. We want to, it's time to get a permanent person in that role. So there might be a slight shift. We may be coming to you and saying, you know, we need to advertise and post this position as a full-time position, and perhaps there'll be some other opportunities for that other 0.2 for that person to engage in, maybe as a kind of a pilot, or something else. But we're still in the midst of talking about that internally. So, but I do anticipate that we'll come back to you with some more definitive recommendations regarding that. So, having said that, I think that the proposed program initiatives that you're going to see are really exciting for us on a K-12 level. It's the programs that Chris is going to talk about. We already have pieces of them established. They've been successful, and this presentation has been made earlier to the regional committee, last week to the Sherborne committee, and now the Dover committee is seeing it. So, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go through just a few slides, and then we can share some questions afterwards. So thank you for the opportunity to do this presentation. It's been an exciting 6 months for me to become a part of the Dover Sherborne schools. I've participated in many conversations about the strengths and needs of our schools, and tonight's proposal speaks to my findings in regard to both what we do well and what we want to improve. We have a program at the region that provides services to our students with language-based learning disabilities. Students in this program will typically qualify for special education as a student with a specific learning disability in the area of reading, reading comprehension, reading fluency, or written language. Additionally, these students often participate fully in gen ed classes, but require support during those classes for tasks, there you go, that are language rich. Students are instructed in small group for reading fluency, decoding, comprehension strategies, executive functioning, and organization. This is a picture of our LBLD program over time at the region. In order to understand the need for an additional teacher, which is what my ask is at the end of it all, it's important to understand the history of the program, the matriculation of students and the avoidance of additional cost as an out-of-district student. As you can see from this slide, in the year, let's see, I'll show you my pointer, here we go. In the year 2013-2014, we had a very small program started at the high school to bring 2 students back to district. Each year the program has grown and we believe some costs have been avoided. In 2015-16, the program expansion required adding 2 additional educational assistants in order to continue to support the students in the gen ed classes. We have done this well and we find we are in the need for an additional expansion. I think I'm tired. I don't ever stammer like that. So here's where we added the EAs here in 15-16. So when I began in July, we lost 4 students to out-of-district placements because the program, particularly at the high school, did not span enough of the gen ed classes. By adding an additional teacher, we will be able to move to a more rich consult participation and collaboration with our gen ed teachers in order to assure full participation for our LBLD students and full application of the strategies across all content areas. We are therefore requesting a cost increase of $66,000 for next year to fund an additional LBLD teacher at the region. This would provide a venue for the return of up to 5 students at the region. So that's our prediction here.
Chris, could you just, the small type at the bottom left that I can't read,
Sure.
the asterisk, what does it say?
That tells us that high school students out of district tuition is approximately $60,000 and middle school out of district students is approximately $40,000.
Per student.
Per student, right.
Great, thank you.
And that these numbers here indicate the potential of students to return to district.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, pardon me?
How many are Dover?
That's not
That's the suspense that she was.
That's right, I'm trying to build it, there should be music in the background.
One of the important points of this slide is that the program was begun in 13-14 with 2 high school students. Those were 2 high school students who actually came back from an out-of-district placement. Both of those students happened to be Sherborne students at the time. And so that cost of providing a teacher in the budget, FY14 budget, and the consultant from Landmark Consultant became part of the region budget, which Dover, of course, participates in. So Dover shared, of course, a portion of those costs. Sherborne was able to adjust their out-of-district budget as a result. So the point is that we project that there'll be 11 students in the program. So over the course of the last 4 years, the program has grown from 2 students to 11 students. A number of those students are students at the high school, at the middle school level, that were able to transition from either Chickering or Pine Hill, and some of those students were out of district. So the program has certainly, at this point, provided, tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars in cost avoidance for out-of-district tuitions. And under this proposal, it's not guaranteed because parents typically, will not make a decision to bring their children back from an out-of-district placement until they know there's a program that's established, of course. But there's an opportunity here for growing next year's program by another 5 students. So there would be a total of 16, which I think is fabulous.
Again, just quickly thinking about the cost avoidance in the math, is that 66 for the educator, is that salary or is that fully loaded?
It's just the salary.
Okay.
Do we know if those two?
But just, I'm sorry, just to that point, when we talk about tuitions, we don't talk about transportation.
Okay.
So I think,
Yep, no, it's good.
I don't think all the numbers are up.
No, that's helpful.
Right.
That's good to know.
Do we know whether the 2013 2 high school students graduated from Dover Sherborne?
Yes, yes. Yes. And I looked at the attrition of the students within the program, and it was quite revealing and positive.
Okay.
So the next program that we're going to talk about is the Life Skills program. So currently we have about 9 students out of district that could participate in a life skills classroom at the region. A student that would be appropriate for this type of a program is a student that's identified as a student with a disability of autism, intellectual disabilities, multiple disabilities, or neurological disabilities. These students require a modified curriculum, instruction in life skills, vocational instruction, and are not typically earning a diploma. We currently have a very small program at the middle school and have interest in expanding this to the high school for at least one student that is currently out of district. It is our hope to expand this program over time by demonstrating its success through the success of its students, including their academic and vocational successes, their engagement in the whole school community, and their successful transition into adult opportunities. We are requesting a cost increase of $66,000 for next year to fund an additional life skills teacher at the region. This would provide a venue for the return of students at the region and reduce the flow of students to out-of-district programs from the elementary school as students transition from the elementaries to the region.
And has that been a fairly typical trend where there would be, at that point in time, when they transition from elementary to regional, they'd also be, at that juncture,
Yes.
they'd be transitioning out?
Yes, yes. The one student that is here, this one. So that one student was slotted in the budget to go out of district. And through the work in the summer, as I came aboard, we were able to work into a very successful program for him at the high school.
And I don't want to get kind of too far down the rabbit hole, but do we know why it's at that particular time? Is it the developmental process, or is there more individualized attention at the elementary school versus the middle school?
Yeah, it has to do with the presentation of the curriculum and then the students' access and needs and their developmental needs. So as those particular students enter into the middle school, the curriculum gap it's really evident. And they're really doing a modified curriculum that looks very different. As I said, the students that would fit into this program are students who are not going to earn a diploma. So they have a very different set of skills that they need to acquire through curriculum. And still the application of the standards, but they just take on a very different access point. And so we have seen those students either go out at the very early elementary because we don't have anything that, as a parent, you're looking at the continuum of service. What does my student need at this level, and what do we see in the district as the child ages onward? And without having that developmental continuum available for kids, we are losing them at the younger levels too, and at the transition.
So I don't want to interrupt, but anytime we have a student who can stay in district, from a community perspective and fulfilling our civilized duty, it's a very happy moment. From an economic perspective, this also seems an entirely sensible path to take. What I'm also sensing is that this is also going to be part of a cultural shift as well. And I can't speak to the other schools, but at Chickering here we have our own cultural shift with the integrated preschool classroom that, as it marches through the years, every year, will change the culture of being able to intervene and help and support these children in the building. And it's at the other end of the educational spectrum, at the older ages, it's also happening as well from what you're proposing. So it's just seeing that at both levels.
That's right. And so I represent money somewhat up on my slides, but it really, these programs and these initiatives come from a desire for me as the leader of the special ed department, and definitely shared throughout the leadership team, to have our students in our schools. It is absolutely a pull from all of us to keep the kids in district or get them back.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
No, thank you.
One question, just thinking about the ratios or what, so if we went to an additional teacher for 17, 18, do we have indications of interest of, because we have potential here, which
Right,
is fine, but I just want to know if we're going to add one and that doesn't come to fruition, what happens? Because then if you go to next year, we have 2 teachers that potentially could support 4 students. So if we just got 1 out of the potential 2, do we need to go to another
We do
teacher,
because
or-
of the level of, the interested party is a high school student, and the age span is too great to span the 2 buildings.
Yep.
With one teacher and the 2 students in particular. And that, it's a rich opportunity for the district to be given the moment of trust from a family who's currently out of district, where they're saying, no, make it happen in district. And so I think it's an opportunity you don't want to let pass
So there's a strong interest if we make it happen, which, again, to Adrian's point, is fantastic.
That's right.
There's definitely, both parties, ourselves and
That's
the
right.
other interested party, are both sort of committed.
Right.
In addition to that, for the current program that's at the middle school, there was a lot of work done to create that environment for this year, for that student to remain at the middle school. And by creating the program at the high school, which it appears that there's a lot of interest on this one family part to then respond to that once they know the program is established. It does provide an incentive and shows that the families at the middle school that there will be a continuum of services, so that the family becomes invested at the middle school level to continue to move through the DS district.
And the 2 districts, middle school, high school dynamic is an interesting one, just in terms of, you talk about just the logistics and whatnot. So having the program even at the high school, to your point, Bill, just kind of continues.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't stop after grade 8 and then we're OE again.
Right.
So.
This is, I think this is terrific. There are tons of questions, I'm trying to limit them. Would the intent be to have a permanent program regardless of the particular, if for some reason there's a lull in time where at one of the schools there isn't a need for the program,
Yeah.
is there a way to repurpose the educator or educators there for that particular year so the program would stay in place and
Yeah,
there's
so
continuity?
what's nice is that I think that we'll have customers. As I look at our kids out of district and meaningful times to make changes for individual students. So, for example, maybe one of our younger kids is at an elementary program. By the time they're ready to finish that program, if they're at a collaborative, they're most likely going to change buildings. That's an opportunity for the district to present, well, I have another option for you. It's back in district. So we have enough customers to feed that need.
And not only that, but there's another possibility, and in establishing a program and making a program one that is desirable. There are options that DS has to, in certain cases, make that program available to students from nearby communities whose school does not have a program. And for whatever reason, there isn't an interest in either a collaborative or private program. And so there are a number of schools that make those opportunities available to nearby, to other towns.
Has there been any discussion, even preliminary kind of brainstorming about creating centers of excellence among districts? So perhaps Midfield would be serving a particular population and Dover-Sherburne would be serving another, and there could be...
Yeah, I think we lean on our collaboratives for that, and I think we're supposed to.
Yeah.
I think this is, I believe that we will keep the program broad enough that it encompasses kids with various disabilities. I think for this life skills program,
one of the deciding factors for admission is a student that's not going to be earning a diploma. And so it's that heavily modified curriculum. The student that needs that, they're going to take an alternative assessment for MCAS, and they're not going to be, they'll be participating in the school community through whole school moments or electives or specials that are appropriate with support. And then hopefully some reverse inclusion opportunities, similar to like a Best Buddies or a Circle of Friends opportunity. So that's how they'll become a part of the school community. But I don't see it becoming, we just don't have the we have to lean on our collaboratives for that really special population, like that more multiply handicapped group of students that requires a ton of related service providers that have a level of expertise for the most severe kids. Like that's a student that is going to benefit. We can't replicate what the collaboratives are doing in district. It really. So as we create the life skills program, what we understand is that the needs at the region level are going to shift a little bit, which is informing some of the next slide also, and that's about the board certified behavior consultant, or what we call in district the BCBA. So currently our board certified BCBA are our highly qualified educators that provide behavioral consultation to the special education teams and some direct service for students. They do have caseloads at the elementary schools. Currently, as you see from the slide, we have a 0.8 FTE at Chickering and a 0.4 FTE at Pine Hill. As we expand our continuum of service for students with complex needs, it's imperative that the approach and model of service demonstrate consistency of programming throughout the district. Our request is to create one district-wide BCBA at 1.0 FTE. By moving this position to a single employee in a district-wide position, we hope to establish that strong continuum of service and delivery so that students, families, and teachers find greater growth for their individual students. Now, what's misrepresented in my slide, and I kind of did it on purpose knowing that it would be a little misleading, is the caseload number. So
thank you.
Yeah, I know. And you number people. So here's the problem. So Chickering has 12 students that are identified on their IEPs as having BCBA support, and that is fulfilled by our 0.8 FTE. Pine Hill has 17 students that are accessing the BCBA at 0.4 FTE. So that's what our little asterisk down here says, that the caseload doesn't, it's a way of counting, but it's apples to oranges. You don't know the level of need of each one of those cases, and that's sort of what that represents. But I wanted to give you some understanding of how much service the BCBA provides. So my vision for next year would include a 0.6 FTE, so hiring one person and sharing that one person throughout the district, and it would probably look like a 0.6 of that FTE at Chickering, a 0.3 at Pine Hill, and a 0.1 at the region. And that model of service would look more like a consultation service to the special ed team to support the students that need that level of support. Currently, we have a number of one-to-one students that receive one-to-one support that are supported, those one-to-ones are supported by the liaison. And in each of the elementary buildings, those liaisons collaborate with the BCBA. We need that continuum of that model at the region for our students that require the BCBA at the region. And we believe through our leadership conversation that that level of expertise can be shared more richly in that way.
Right now, are there two individuals sitting in the 0.8 and the 0.4?
That is correct.
And you're going to move it to a one individual?
Correct.
Going between all three?
Correct. So currently, the BCBA at Pine Hill is also shares a position in the preschool, and the 0.8 at Chickering is currently it is just that, it's just a 0.8 position. That's it. So I know we asked questions throughout, but
So the only thing I would just say is, to me, what deeply encouraging, and you don't know what you didn't know until you see something that seems truly right. But there are three elements that are just very encouraging here. One is, as I said, the cultural adjustments for good that seem to be happening at many levels and many age groups. Second is the ability to view our cohort across 4 buildings. And I don't know, but if one were to rewind a certain number of years or not have this view across 4 buildings, I would imagine that seeing a smaller cohort in isolation might lead a building to make different decisions. And the third, I think, is just to know that we're going to have robust examples of programming in the district for the children to stay in the district for many reasons, but also for the financial robust health of the district, which we need to continue. So that's all.
It changes the lives of all of the children and members of the community, which is what
In a
is
positive
possible.
way.
In a hugely positive way.
Is it your kind of overall goal to be able to effectively net fund any of these new programs that are rolled out, rather than invest in them knowing that there'll be a need in the future? By net fund, I mean, okay, we anticipate that we'll be saving X dollars from bringing students back, and those funds can be redeployed.
I think that's probably more our goal as a committee.
Well,
But she's looking at various programs to put in place.
Right. It's a good question. It's a difficult question to answer specifically, because there's a little bit of the what comes first, chicken or egg concept here. We can't bring students back if we don't have a program in place. So we need to have the program in place to affect the possibility that students will return to their home district. In the case of the life skills program that's at the middle school, that was not on the radar screen at budget time last year. The student who came back was slated to go out of district. It wasn't until the springtime where when there were meetings with the parents, that the parent really wanted to explore the possibility of staying in the district. So it was, and this is not unusual in the creation of these kind of programs. It's oftentimes, a collaborative effort between the district and the parents, but perhaps parents really pushing the district in some cases. Especially with the life skills program, it's more of a low incident population, and so we do have collaboratives. There are private programs out there that students attend, but it is a program where if you can build a program with a core number of students, it's really the right thing to do. To have the students come back. That's really the number one priority. If there's a financial savings as a result of that, all the better. So the quick answer is that in the case of these two programs, in order to effectively continue the language-based program at the high school level, so that it's really effective and will want parents to allow their students to continue through that, we need to add another program. We need to enhance that high school program. We may do it this year, and there is a chance that none of those high school potentials may come back. However, it reinforces and builds on that model, so that as our students moving from 5th grade into 6th grade continue to come in, then that program is there, it's established, and those kids will stay in the district through 12th grade. For the life skills program, we believe that there will be, that concept of, in the initial establishment, we believe that there will be that opportunity for resulting return of the student and not paying that tuition will pay for the first year of the program. But we just can't, we can project that, but we can't be certain of that now. We're fairly confident, but the parent needs to see that the program is being supported in the budget. So.
Bill, how does it look that the region, is the region in support of these proposals in terms of funding it?
Well, we'll certainly know more at our next regional meeting, which is February 9th. And, you know, the issue with the regional budget right now is that it's considerably higher with the first pass than what the Sherburne Advisory Committee's guidance was. I believe that it's very closely in line with what Dover Warrant's guidance was for the budget in terms of level services. These, of course, would be new additions, and we will do this year what we do every year is provide a strong rationale for anything above level services. And I think given the potential positive impact on the Dover budget in terms of for the out-of-district budget, it kind of makes a lot of sense to me that there would be a lot of support, certainly on that side.
And there's also an argument for level of service, because the students would be receiving these services elsewhere,
Mhm.
which is
Sure.
the same for the
Sure.
But the budgets don't line up. That's
But the
problem.
budgets aren't lining up now,
Control them
but.
accepting the proposals.
Right, but at the next regional meeting, there's a number of pieces that we'll be putting on the table because we'll have more updated information. And I fully expect that we'll see that gap that exists now to be reduced substantially, and I'll use that word. So I think that we're in a good place for that. But there, you know, we have to go through the process. And there are a number of more meetings that we will have to eventually get us to where I believe we need to be.
Keen to move things on.
Thank you.
So we have two more things we want to review with you. The first is there's an update on the projected FY 2018 out-of-district budget. You did get a spreadsheet very quickly. There is a need to make an adjustment to two lines. The first is line 23. I know we've adjusted the tuition, the extended school year tuition. That rate went up by an additional $424. But you know what our practice has been is, given how we construct the out-of-district budget, we propose it in November, and if we learn of changes, either positive or negative, up through the time when the budget is voted by the school committee at the public hearing budget date, we make those adjustments. And then there's an adjustment on line 25 where we've added $10,000. That is directly related to one of the changes you just saw in FY17. And the other change you saw in FY17, that's $16,000. I draw your attention to line 14 on the first page.
Okay.
We had already projected that there would be a full-time placement for that student for next year, so we're covered in terms of our projection for next year. So the difference, so I'll leave it right there. When we get to the next document, which is the
Bill, just what is the ESY? Sorry.
extended school year, so it's a summer
Thank you.
program.
Summer, okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Could I ask a question about the transportation increases, which really is a question from November when you first, it's not a change in the budget.
Right.
But what explains that 30% increase over this year?
So it's, if you remember how the matrix works now, you pay for the kids, so our numbers are set now based on our ridership now. So we added riders between the 2 years, so we're making up for that difference.
Okay.
So the number we paid last year was really a little bit under what we should have paid because of the way Accept now, so that you know exactly what's gonna be in your budget. They base their, their assessment to you for 18 based on your 17 ridership.
Okay.
So 17 budget was based on the 16 ridership. So we had new, remember all the activity we had riders added to our point base.
Okay.
Which
But we had
picked
to
up.
pay for it this year. We didn't have to pay for it.
We didn't have to pay for it last
But we
year.
got caught one year when there was someone who went residential, right? And we had to pay for it even though they weren't using it.
Right.
That's
So
part of the
that's
it
program.
goes
part
either
of the-
way, but you're
Exactly.
saying this year, we're
Exactly.
not
Right.
paying for the riders, we have
Right.
to pay for it next year.
Exactly.
Another way to look at that is last year, if you remember, we ended the year with about a $340,000 negative tuition variance over what was projected because of the additional students. If the transportation matrix was different and you paid as you go, as you went, that 345 would have been substantially higher last year.
Picking up their
So
transportation.
those additional students were transported, but we didn't pay the additional cost. We're now picking it up this year.
We're picking that up, plus remember, this is a fairly new program that they're doing. They ran a deficit. So they did not bill out enough to cover their cost. So every district who participates based on your ridership is picking up a piece of that
Right.
deficit too. So eventually it will sort of get to a good base. But I think the group, now that I attend the Accept meetings, are now, it really is sort of a safer way to do your budget right now. And if you look at it on a per rider basis, we couldn't do it cheaper, because they show you how much a van would cost and what we're paying. And it gives you the comfort that for us not to have that headache is actually a really good, it's worth what we pay. We just have a lot of riders. And they go far, and they go a great distance, which also increases what you're assessed.
And even if they're going in the same direction, their start times are different, so it's a separate fund. I did out-of-district transportation at my other job, and man, oh man, oh man, oh
There were no
man.
savings by, you
Right.
can't save by teaming up, people going in the same direction.
You can try it
So,
once in a while.
the little packet that I gave everyone tonight, the first page is a, and I'm sorry, I have to give it to you guys tomorrow, in our office mail-in, just a tracking sheet, so as we go from budget version to budget version, you can see, it's not really long, because we don't really have a lot between when we met in November and when we're meeting now. But if you go down to your out-of-district tuition and transportation, you'll see the 10,633 pickup that Bill just mentioned. And they did, between November and now, we did tweak the Accept matrix revision a little bit. Dover just got a little bit of a tweak, 2,999, so. That covers where we are with out-of-district, so a net uptick of $7,600 for your out-of-district. If you look above to the in-district, Adri and I attended a capital budget meeting last week.
Gosh, that seems a
I
long
think
time
it
ago.
was last week, right? And they had not really addressed the technology yet. If you remember, we presented the technology as a lump sum going to capital, but we know in previous years we have been trying to work a little differently. So with our discussions with budget, we decided that $27,900 of that technology supplement was going to be moved to our operating budget. And the Chromebooks, because we were buying 50 of them, and that went over the threshold of 10,000, we're leaving as capital. And it's actually going to be a nice transition, because I think come April, we'll work with the capital committee and come up with a technology protocol that all replacements will probably be in our operating, and we'll only bring to capital to be presented to the town new pilots and new kinds of equipment.
Yep, the tone and language was very accommodating and very appreciative that when you have replacement operational CapEx, even though it's technology in 2017, it should be treated as such.
So in your packet, you have an updated, the normal capital request sheet that shows the 40,900 going down to think it's 13,000. You also have an updated page 22 to your supplement that highlights for you the items that are going to capital versus operating. And then you had not received before, you now have the inventory listing updated as of today of what is currently in the schools, at what grade level and what devices.
Okay.
And that was all sent to capital today at their request for their review. The only other reduction, or the only other change we had was a reduction. Chris and I had time to sit down and just go through all the sped contracted services now that she's more familiar with them. And we found $6,500 that we could reduce out of the initially presented budget.
Was it stapled to the back of the pages?
No, now she's more familiar with who we use and she knows what we're gonna use and what we're not gonna use next year. So we had taken a little bit out the first cut, but we were able to take a little bit more out the second. So that gives you, unfortunately with the technology supplement, items coming over an increase of 21,400, but that was to be expected. We just knew we hadn't gone to that part yet.
So the bottom line is we are proposing to adjust the budget by $29,034, additional dollars to what was proposed in the first pass. And for those of you that are looking at the numbers on the budget adjustment sheet versus the spreadsheet I gave you in the out-of-district, just please note, the out-of-district spreadsheet had not yet taken into account the minus $2,999 on the transportation piece.
Okay.
So once you take that 363, subtract out the 2999, you'll see that the out-of-district budget of 3,202,078 will then match to the spreadsheet.
So just so I understand, the net change, $29,034.
Yes.
That includes a move of 27,900.
Yes.
Of that would have been in capital request and is now in the general fund
So that
request.
one was an even,
Yep, so I
exactly.
just,
Yeah,
my
good point. Yep,
mental
absolutely.
balancing, okay.
Right.
Any questions on that?
This is so nice how this all ties together.
And just for some context to wrap it up,
Yep.
Bloody Saturday at 9 o'clock at night.
so for some context to wrap that up, the annual meeting of the chair, the superintendent, and the business manager with the warrant committee to discuss the budget, the status of the budget where we are now, will take place next Wednesday at the warrant committee's meeting. So we'll talk about this $29,000. I imagine we may also talk about some other potential adjustments, given what we just talked about with the special education programming, and some other things we're looking at, that we continue to look at, which I anticipate, if there are adjustments to be made, I would tell you that I anticipate those adjustments would lower the budget amount, and all of that will be put together for you to review ahead of the next regularly scheduled meeting, which is now scheduled for March 13th, which will also serve as the public hearing date for the presentation of the budget. So you will see, you'll have an opportunity ahead of time to see those adjustments, and those will be incorporated into the public hearing budget presentation, after which you will then be asked to formally vote to approve an FY18 budget.
So Christine's proposal may affect our budget numbers.
Yes.
Based on
BCBA.
the potential that
The
you're.
BCBA,
yeah.
of course, and then we're just not at a place yet where we can speak to the OOD
Okay.
tuition budget.
So I'd like to move on to the item 8, which is the capital plan update. So I'm going to speak on this, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
You can tell me what I forget.
We'll not forget anything.
So for those people who wish to hear a vastly more in-depth and lengthy version of this, I'm going to be presenting to Capital on February the 14th at 7:30 in the morning, and I believe the warrant committee are going to be there as well. And I'm going to be going through what will really be a first draft of the presentation on the air conditioning solutions for the school that will eventually be done in town meeting in May. So I'd like to thank members of the Capital Subcommittee, Dawn, Bill and Brooke and Ralph Kelly for all the help they've put in and will continue to put in these coming weeks and in past weeks. Essentially what's been happening since the last time that an update was given is that we've been examining and deciding on the type of mechanical cooling solution for the building. We had a meeting with Capital where we were really hugely encouraged by the tone and the appreciation of the need. We were asked to go back and do some more robust work on making sure that the decision we made on the type of solution was not made for just the reason of it having the smallest installation fee. There's going to be a school building here for many decades. I want to try and make the correct decision for many reasons. So what's happened is the reports from engineers who came in the building have been pulled from 2008 and 2015, and we've been studying them. We've also met with two groups of engineers, one who came in and spent 2 hours in the building and provided us with their view, and another team who are very familiar with the building because they are actually the company who maintain and service the current air conditioning and air handling systems.
Not air conditioning.
No, there is the air conditioning system that exists here. So essentially we're presented with 3 types of systems to choose from. The first would be what some would consider a nuclear option, which would be a fully ducted air conditioning system that would exist in a building if it was built right now. In the reports that were written in 2008 and 2015, and in the people we met with in the last 8 weeks who have been in the building, nobody would suggest that that is the right thing to do. The words are actually used to me that no engineer would recommend you doing that in this building. That's obviously the highest cost option, but it's also inappropriate. We're very lucky to also have a conversation in the last 8 weeks with the original architect of the building, who confirmed that there actually is no ductwork in the building for that kind of system. Certainly I'd spoken to a number of people who had been in town longer than I had been, and there was this urban myth around town that everything was just there, they just decided at the very last minute not to do it. And that actually is not actually factual. The ductwork does not exist. It was, if it was in the plans, it was pulled before the building was actually constructed. Second system would be a system that would have a large condenser on the roof, and then would use the air handlers in the roof, and there would be refrigerant branch units sat at the air handler locations. Now this would be logical in that we would use the piping through which air currently flows in the air exchange system. It would mean for less refrigerant branch units to be installed, because you're installing them at the air handler location rather than at the classroom location. But there are inefficiencies here. There's inefficiencies of cooling, because the refrigerant branch unit is not set at the classroom location, it's set further back, and there would be loss of cooling efficiency. And there's also a risk, and this was highlighted in one of the reports that we had by engineers, it was a risk of moisture and mold building up, which is clearly not something one would want. It'd also be much more difficult to, again, looking at efficiency and responsibility of use of energy, it would be less easy to modulate the cooling for each classroom or each pairs of classroom, because again, you're setting the cooling unit further back and away from the classroom. But we're indicated that would be at a relatively low price. had a placeholder of $1 million in for this capital item, this system where the refrigerant units were placed at the air handlers, we were indicated that the cost may be somewhere around $300,000-400,000 for that. The third system would be a system where smaller condensers, the sort of size where you would find outside a Metro West home, but commercial grade, would exist outside the building. And copper wiring would go up outside of the building and feed 2 classrooms. And there would be air conditioning units, much like if you were staying in a hotel or staying in a conference room. You have above a window, above a door, you'd have a rectangle air conditioning unit, and that's run by the direct expansion mode. It's very simply called a ductless split system. That sounds very glamorous, but all it means is there are no ducts and the condenser is in a different place to the actual evaporator. And so this would allow one to vary the cooling by classroom. It would have a modular setup so that if something goes wrong, 30 classrooms don't go out. Only 2 classrooms go out, and it would be easy to be fixed. And when we've spoken to the engineers, this repeatedly is the type of system that's recommended. So there is on the possible downside, there's more kit being installed. So there are, a relatively, you've got 15, 16 condensers on the outside of the building. Ralph Kelly was very kind to suggest a form of sort of fence that would go around it, would stop little people climbing on it and jumping off it. And there are, if one is bothered about aesthetic issues, there's clearly casing that could be used for copper piping. This sort of thing happens in schools all the time. And the engineers we spoke to just recently were commenting this is a very, very common type of installation of mechanical cooling for schools.
Can I just interject, 'cause not to be afraid there's more kit, it doesn't mean there's more to go wrong, because they're very simplistic. I mean, they're literally, this is a much more simplistic method of.
It's much less intrusive, isn't it?
Less intrusive, and there's less to go wrong.
Have they given indication on the O&M costs over time versus the centralized system in the existing?
So the life of these type of solutions would be 15 to 20 years. Warranties would last 1 to 3 years, but you'd have a service contract that would run in the small number of thousands of dollars. The life of a larger nuclear fully ducted system could be as much as 30 years. But again, the cost could be 3 or 4 times the price of what of these systems, and the attractiveness of the cost, because the technology has advanced so much that the cost of these systems in the third solution that I described, we initially in the past had been quoted at 600,000, but we've had some indications that it could even be significantly less than that. So we're encouraged by the financial context, we're encouraged by the efficiency context, we're encouraged by the fact that it's consistently recommended by the engineers as a solution. What happens next is the business manager is drawing up a request for services for a full design study and costing. Given the extremely non-intrusive nature of what's happening, that you're placing a condenser and running copper piping up and just going straight into 2 classrooms, we've been guided that this is going to be much quicker and a much simpler study to lead to full costing than we'd initially feared when we came here and asking for $65,000 from the building fund and the other revolving funds. So that's enormously encouraging. So this is happening now. What I'm going to do for the meeting on the 14th is put together a full presentation, which I'll share with school committee members for feedback, of the story, the story of the data gathering, the story of data, the story of the rationale, the story of the actions that have been taken, from the trees to the film off the windows, to the fans, to the humidity data capturing, to the recommissioning of the air handlers, to the making sure that the system is working properly and we're not missing anything that's simple, to the examination of the various options, to this option, to the costing, and then hopefully the ask. So we are under some time pressure because we have town meeting coming up, but we're very encouraged, and we're very encouraged. Currently, the warrant item has been reduced from $1 million to 800,000, but I would suspect that that's going to be reduced even further when we get a full costing from the feasibility study.
And this approach, as well as being the one that's been recommended across the board, is also the easiest to install. So it could potentially be done
over the
summer, next summer.
And what does that look like from the outside? Not the condenser units, the mini splits. Is it just venting?
Do you have that picture, Vinny?
Yep.
Have efficiencies of windows been looked at or anything like that?
It's in the classroom.
Yeah, but there's some kind of venting to the outside, right? Yeah, what does that look like from the outside?
So that's on, what you see on the outside of the van.
Just the pipe?
Just the pipe.
Just the pipe?
Right, so it's basically they'll have to cut a hole in the piping boards and it'll hook up to the condenser.
Could plant, just some little plants.
So there's no venting?
You know how to do
There's
this.
no
We want
external
to-
venting?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a pump that is doing this.
Right.
You almost, so it's connected here.
And then there's just a little pipe that goes out.
John, dare I ask, do we know what the?
Come back to the question.
Oh.
I was just wondering if there was any window efficiency concerns, or has that been looked at, or?
No, so the town capital meeting, the point of the windows came up, and they said, look, we've heard about these windows, don't make them anymore. Can you, when the on-site insight report is being refreshed, which is within the next 12 months, which is the 20-year capital plan for the 4 buildings, can you please look at, and there were a number of things that weren't looked at in the first one, such as the cafeteria and the food service areas, but can you please look at windows as well? So that, again, it couldn't have been a more reassuring meeting, because they were saying, look, if there's a building-wide need to replace windows, come and let us know about it. And
So you go for like the ask once versus going back and asking for a significant item twice?
I don't think that I think having this system here means that we don't have to go and ask or to deal with the windows right now, because it allows us to solve the issue for the teachers and the children right now.
Because the windows themselves wouldn't solve the problem.
There's been talk about them, I just don't know if they're inefficient, like if we're gonna put in the schooling system and they're not very good windows, are we?
No, we haven't heard that the
Okay,
windows.
all right,
No,
great.
that's just, we're being recommended, the size of the condensers that are being recommended take into account all of those kind of issues.
But I think there is, within the next, with Dover being a green community, there'll be, I think, strong reasons to look at all efficiencies. And these are 16-year-old windows. There have been advancements in windows in the last 16 years, and we need to find ways to conserve energy better, whether it's cooling energy or it's heating energy.
So speaking of energy.
Yeah.
Do we know what the effect is going to be for the energy costs, and is that reflected anywhere in the budgets?
Yep. So, Dawn, do you know off the top of your head how much this building spends on electricity?
It's what we haven't done is, we have like $134,000 in the budget we know that we've just locked in a lower contract price, but I'm not adjusting for that, knowing that we were gonna put the central air in, that I think that probably what we would have taken out of the budget would cover the operating costs, based on our engineer's estimate
Yep, so
of what an
that
annual
includes
So they've given
maintenance
you that,
contract?
you can do whatever mental math to.
Excuse me?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, would that also include the maintenance contract?
The maintenance contract, we actually talked to our current contractor, and it's minimal.
De minimis.
Because it's really not high maintenance, the units. So a couple $100, he said 500, I mean, it would be immaterial to our total contract
So there would be,
cost.
so we did have one engineer who looked at the power consumption and estimated that for the less efficient choice, when if the refrigerant branch units were at the air handler location, that would be somewhere of a 8 to 10% increase on power costs. But if we would go to the more efficient option with the refrigerant at the classroom location, it would be about half that. So again, there's lots of efficiency reasons that have led us to that.
Do you envision that this is something that's used all the time, or is it used only in those periods when the temperature is
So
extreme? And I wonder, to answer that, if it's, like, what does the middle school do when they put that in? Is it just to cool off those days that are really bad, or is it to keep everything even and keep the humidity at a constant, and then, which I think is easy?
So let me answer the first point. Let me not answer. Let me give my context on the first point, and I'll defer to Bill and Dawn. So the data that we gathered showed that in the shoulder seasons, so in September and in May and June, about 2/3 of days were either too hot or too humid in classrooms. So, but in school days other than those 10 weeks, there was significantly less than that. So, but I wouldn't want the school committee to have a view on that. I'd leave it to the building and the administration.
Right, so we talked with our service contractors, and Ralph Kelly was there, about setting, parameters that the system would run on. Because if you're gonna have it there, you wanna make use of it. But knowing that we wouldn't run it during the summer. So it's limited use, and because of that limited use on the shoulder seasons also was gonna give it a longer lasting life. So depending on how much we use it, he said it could go 20, 25 years.
Right.
So that's something, a trade-off that we have for going with this way.
And at the middle school, the set points are centrally controlled.
Right.
So you can't adjust the temperature levels in the individual classrooms. So they're pre-programmed during those shoulder seasons at particular set points. So if the interior temperature rises above, I'm not quite sure, I don't know if it's 74 or 75 degrees, then the air conditioning will kick on automatically.
That's what's anticipated here? Is it central energy management?
Well,
You don't know.
so we understand that there's an opportunity perhaps to tie that into our central control system. We need to have some conversations, frankly, about whether that's actually a good idea in this particular case. It may not be.
Right.
So.
Only because we know certain parts of the building are hotter than others, and it's a little more complicated because of how many condensers we're going to have to be able to regulate it to that level. So it could hurt us to do that, so that would be something we'll.
Really needs to be played out
Yeah.
once we know whether we're going forward, then those are kind of some of the details that we'll be able to put in place as we go through the installation phase and then ramp up to be able to start using them on August 30th, 2017.
Okay. Any questions on that? So, I'd like to draw your attention to item 9, the consent agenda. You have the Dover School Committee minutes of 22nd of November and December the 19th. Our annual donation acceptance from ExxonMobil Dover, and the tremendously well-written town report. If anyone, any discussion or questions on the consent agenda? May I have a motion approving it?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Henry. Second, Michael. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Thank you. And for communications members, there are some minutes from the region and from Sherburn, and I would encourage you to look at them. I'd like to adjourn the meeting, please. 9:19. Thank you. Thank you very much.